Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're a part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Podchaser, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Shawn P B Robinson, talking about Annalynn the Canadian Spy. We always love it when Shawn is on the show. And hey, I know that you and your kids are going to love a special series of episodes we are producing here for the Reading with Your Kids podcast. They're called Solve It. Solve It. I love it. I am having so much fun putting these episodes together. I'm doing it with my friend, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. I tell you, I can't believe the people that I've had a chance to interview for this show. I'm talking about astronauts, nuclear physicists, marine biologists, and wait till you see the names. I'm telling you, Solve It is amazing. And it is produced specifically for parents and kids to listen to together. What a great habit to get into. Check it out. It's coming to you May 19th right here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's called Solve It. Joining us on the line right now from Ontario in Canada. It's a returning guest, one of our friends. He's back with us to tell us about Annalynn, the Canadian Spy. Please welcome back to the show, Shawn P B Robinson. Shawn, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me here. You know, it's always a pleasure to be on the show.
I'm really excited. Shawn and I, it's depending on where you are, we're recording this on day 18 of the quarantine here in Boston. Different days all around the world. What a unique period in human history. Almost the entire planet is under quarantine. Who would have imagined that?
I couldn't imagine just a few weeks ago, right? Like, I mean, everything seemed relatively fine, right? And now here we are, and it's people aren't leaving their homes, right? Yeah. It's you go out only to get food.
Yeah. And one of the things that's happening during this quarantine, hopefully by the time that you are listening to this, the quarantine would have been lifted and we'd be able to move around with a little bit more freedom. But one of the things that's happening is people are starting to realize that they really need the arts to get through moments like this. That, you know, as we're sitting in our homes and we're spending time at home, not being able to get out, we're watching Netflix, we're listening to music, we're reading books. And so the importance of arts in our lives is becoming really, really clear to people.
I think so, and I think that's a good thing, right? I think we take it for granted a lot of times, but we need to realize that this is something that we enjoy. This makes us better. It points out the creativity inside of us, and I think that's a very wonderful thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful thing. I just wish we didn't have to go to this extent to learn the lesson.
I agree with you there. Absolutely.
Well, tell us all about Annalynn, the Canadian Spy. First off, when you sent me the proposal to come on, and I'm reading Annalynn, the Canadian Spy, Canadians are really nice. Do they really have spies?
Well, that's the fun thing about it. You know, Canada, I remember somebody joking a while back. He said, I saw the Canadian Navy, both ships, right? And it's the idea that, you know, as Canadians, when it comes to that kind of thing, spies, when it comes to military, things like that, our military are peacekeepers. That's what they are. They go in when there's some bit of trouble to help out, right? But we're not if we're called upon to fight in a war, we're kind of, we're a small portion of that battle, right? And when it comes to spies, one of the things I joke about, like, we do have a spy agency. It's called CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence, but I I joke about that a bit in the book, and the girl asked when she finds out about the spy, she said, well, how many spies are there? He goes, we have 3, right? And I'm one. I recruit, 10-year-old girls to come and be spies for the nation. There's another one, he disappeared. He's keeping an eye on the moose in northern Canada, making sure that they don't act up. And the third one answers the phones, right? And we joke about it, right? Because all her missions are that kind of thing. Like, they're just silly, unusual missions, but she has to go on them and save the nation from a syrup catastrophe or some problem where somebody's messing with hockey or something like that. All these Canadian things.
Well, if I had heard that person make the joke about your Navy, I'd be offended because my grandfather actually served in the Canadian Navy. So, my feathers would be ruffled about that.
Okay. Well, I apologize.
You didn't make the joke. You just reported it. It's okay.
Yeah. And the thing is in the past, Canada, when it came to the Army, take World War II, right? Canada was a major force in World War II. Canada liberated the Netherlands, for instance, right? And Canada was just a major player in that kind of thing. But since then, it's become less of a priority for Canadians. And, so we joke about those things. And during the Gulf War, it's interesting because we had so few pilots, but they recognized that the pilots in the Gulf War, the Canadian pilots, were some of the best in the world because there were so few of them. They got this focused training. They were extremely skilled, but there were hardly any of them. Right? I mean, that's the nature of Canada, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. Canada is this vast nation. It's the second largest country landmass wise. Am I right about that?
It is. I joke about it being the first if you don't count Russia, right? And I mean, that's the way we live, right? We think to ourselves, let's just count us, right? So we're the biggest, but I mean, Russia's bigger.
Right, yeah.
But so we're the second.
It's a massive country, but the population it's really small when you consider how big the landmass is.
It is.
And most of the population lives right along the border with the states. And so we have this fascinating relationship with between the United States and Canada. I think we're kind of like cousins.
Well, we really are. It's the largest undefended border in the world is between Canada and the U.S. We have, I think the population is somewhere around 37 million, and we're the second largest country in the world. So you begin to recognize how much of Canada is uninhabited and just these huge areas just with hardly any people or no people in it.
Right, yeah. I think there are cities in China with that many people.
I think so.
But tell me, where was the inspiration for Annalynn, I'm sorry.
Well, it was interesting because we have some good friends at church, and their daughter's name is Annalynn, and she was showing me a year or so ago something that she had gotten for Christmas, a spy gadget, a kid's spy gadget. And I mentioned it to my wife, and my wife said, hey, she's really into spies right now. And it got me thinking in terms of the spy. And so I kind of borrowed that name and ran with the series about a young girl, and 10 years of age, whatever, that all of a sudden she's hired to be a spy for Canada. She's given a jet, and she has to fly it, and she has no idea how to fly the jet, but they say, oh, well, it can't be too hard. So she gets inside and tries to figure it out and starts going on these missions. And the great thing about it is, as a Canadian, to be able to bring in a lot of Canadian culture, but a lot of Canadian humor and life. But whenever you do that, you go to extremes. So the moose, for instance, we have moose in Canada, and but the moose have been kind of made as kind of the sneaky, you're kind of suspicious of them, this group of animals. You're never really sure what they're up to or whatever. And she one of her missions has to be to infiltrate the moose. And then she flies over to other countries and kinds of figures things out here and there. It's been a blast for me. One of the things that I think it does is it allows for Canadians to be able to laugh about a little bit of our quirks, our love of maple syrup, our love of hockey, things like that. But for the rest of the world, I think it gives a bit of an eye into the way Canadians are, a little bit about our life. The pride we take in winning the gold medal for hockey in the Olympics, and the pride we take in our maple syrup, the pride we take in who we are as a country.
Yeah, and it really is true. Canada, I've said it many times on the show, and I know I've said it to you. I love Canada. I've been to every province in the eastern half of the country, Ontario and Quebec and the Maritimes, and the people are beautiful, and it's really fascinating that this, in the United States, Boston and Providence are two cities that are 45 miles away from each other. The cultures are completely different, and the accents are completely different, and there's language and words you don't use. And I know there are regional differences in Canada, but this vast country, this vast landmass, the people who live there seem to share a lot of the same culture and traits.
We do. People joke about how polite Canadians are. That we always apologize for this or that, and it's true, right? You come to Canada and you find somebody bumps into you in the grocery store with their cart, and they say, well, we say sorry. There's a difference in the accent with sorry, and is it sorry down in?
Sorry, we say sorry.
Yeah, we say sorry, kind of, there's a different kind of feel to it or whatever. But sorry about that. And then we move on and we bump into the next person. Oh, sorry about that. We're always apologizing. There's this expected politeness among Canadians right across the country. We have kind of it's something that kind of sets us apart and makes us very unique as a country.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, if you're going to stand out for something, being polite and friendly, that's pretty cool. That's up there.
Yeah, well, I remember seeing a bus once. There's this picture of this bus that it was in an accident and hit another car, and I didn't look like anyone was hurt. But the thing up on top of the bus that says where it's going next said sorry. And it's just it's a Canadian thing, and people joke about it. And it's a stereotype, but it really is true about us. The amount we apologize, and there's this phrase that sometimes gets used in a grocery store. I'll just scooch past you, because we're always in a grocery store or wherever we are. I guess not during quarantine. We're always trying to navigate with as much politeness as possible.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, as we're talking about Canada and the uniqueness in the culture, one of the things about Canada and one particular part of Canada, Prince Edward Island, a lot of the culture revolves around another literary figure, Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everywhere you go in Prince Edward Island, there is some kind of Anne of Green Gables thing, and it's fascinating. My wife, we did it all. We went to her home and her barbershop and all, everything, and it was really fun. I was just thinking, how cool would it be if kind of Ontario embraced Annalynn the Canadian Spy the way Prince Edward Island has embraced Anne of Green Gables?
Well, that would be fun, because I think the thing is the story has a lot of humor. I write with a lot of humor, and it's just packed full of that. So I think it draws people in, and I think Canadians and I think Ontarians can really get a hold of that and get excited about it. But then it also brings in a lot of our quirks. And but in a really fun way. I think there's one point where she's flying over Canada in her jet, and she keeps looking down and seeing these major landmarks right across Canada as she goes. It kind of draws us all together all across this vast nation.
That's cool.
Yeah. One of the things I added too at the back of the book, which I'm hoping will be a big, because the book comes out in a few days. Well, April 6th, I gather the podcast will be playing after that. Mm-hmm. But it's I put in the back of the book weird laws in Canada and strange facts about Canada. Finding some things and unusual things about Canada, like things like in BC, apparently it's illegal to shoot a Sasquatch. Just kind of wrap your mind around that, right? I mean, you're not allowed to shoot Bigfoot. And so it's just kind of, how did we get to a law such as that, right? That you're not allowed, are we not allowed to shoot the Loch Ness Monster either, right? Like, I don't know what to expect here.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. As you're talking about, Canadians kind of embracing this and being able to laugh at themselves and celebrate, the unique and quirky things about your country, I'm thinking that this would be a wonderful book for a family from the U.S. or from the U.K. or from Australia to read, because it gives, not only is it a fun story, but it gives a glimpse into another culture.
Absolutely. For instance, one of the things that we do is I don't know if you're familiar with the Canadian dish poutine. If you've been to Quebec, you probably are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was kind of created, and I mean, it's nothing, it's not as if it's like, well, how did they come up with that? It's gravy, cheese, and French fries, right? I mean, it's not as if it's like, whoa, that's rocket science, right? But it's, we have at one point, you get something where she finds that her jet is out of gas. Well, what does it run on? Well, poutine. And that makes sense, because poutine is just so fantastic. So next thing you know, they're all eating poutine, right? And it brings a lot of, I think, fun and humor into who we are as a nation. And I think it would give a good eye to people from outside Canada of, okay, this is what Canadians find funny. This is a little bit about Canada. Okay, what is this about moose? And what is this about poutine? Maybe I've never heard of that. Or Nanaimo bars, for instance, is another Canadian treat. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
That one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, it was created in Nanaimo, BC, but it's this kind of like this cookie thing with like this mint or this, this yellowish cream and chocolate on the top. And it's just amazing, right? And I just thought the whole world was enjoying this until I started looking into it and realized, no, this is just Canadians that are enjoying this. The rest of the world must know.
Absolutely. Yes. How important do you think it is for people to be able to laugh at themselves?
I think it's huge. That I joke about, I say, it is with sadness in my heart that I recognize that there are some people who are born without a sense of humor. And it's a difficult life to live if you can't laugh, right? Yeah. And I think when we laugh at ourselves, what we do is and I mean not in a cruel way, sure, not in a demeaning way, but when we laugh at our quirks and we laugh at the things that we say and that we're about, I think it declares a certain amount of acceptance of it, recognition of it, and joy in it.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I've experienced this phenomena. As people listen to the show know that I've been presenting educational magic shows in schools for over 30 years. And at some point, maybe 20 years ago, I developed this one little trick where I would show the audience a bag. And one morning, it just came to me. I said, hey, this bag is empty, just like my head. And it got a huge laugh. And it got a huge laugh for about 15 or 16 years. I changed up other parts of the show. This was just a really good part. But lately, it's, I do the trick and kids were like, oh no, your head is not empty. Like feeling sorry for me. Like, and you'll hear like that one teacher who's 50 or 60 years old, she's laughing and people, her younger colleagues are looking at her like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, it's supposed to be fun. Yeah.
I think we might be getting a little too sensitive these days.
I suppose. And I know others who are not fans of self-deprecating humor for whatever reason, but I do think it's when we're able to laugh at ourselves, I think we're able to accept the fact that we're not perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think that takes a little bit of pressure off us because, if you're walking around and, there's something in the back of your mind saying, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect. That causes a lot of stress. It causes a lot of anxiety. When you're able to kind of fall down and, you're not hurt and you're able to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and have a little giggle at your foibles, well, it's like I'm human, you know, and I can go, and if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Well, and I think the drive to be perfect increases our insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because we recognize that we're not, you know, I'm not, you're not, at least I'm assuming you're not, and we're not perfect, but when we stop and we laugh at it and we accept it, then suddenly the insecurity falls away.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the things that's so hard, that makes middle school so hard for kids, is that they think. And I remember confronting some. I think it was my kid, my son, and his friends, and I was listening to them talk, and it's like, you guys all think, you know, you all think that each other know everything, and you're afraid to let people know that you don't know everything, and you should react because none of you guys know anything, you know.
Yeah. I always say, ignorance is bliss. You want to be happy, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of accept the fact that we don't know everything. And I mean, there's a certain joy in that. But there's nothing but stress in trying to know it all and be right all the time.
Yeah. It's almost as if back when I was a kid, back when you were a kid in middle school, you kind of grew out of that, I need to put on this front. And, at some point when we became adults, we were able to let down that guard and say, okay, I'm not perfect. I can let the world know that I'm not perfect. It almost seems like there's a lot of people who aren't making that step, that developmental step.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I think so. One of the things I joke about a bit in the book is, one of the books, I think the second book in the series, Canada has more donut shops per capita than any other nation in the world, right? And that's not necessarily a positive thing. But you step back from that and you say, but what if we just embrace that? What if we just accept that? But what if we just stop trying to say, no, we only eat healthy, we only this, we're perfect in every way. What if we say, no, we like our donuts?
Yeah.
And so the second book is called Donut Disaster, and it's about somebody that comes along and tries to sabotage all of Canada's donuts, and the nation goes in a panic. And it ends up being a lot of fun.
Oh, no. Now, I know Tim Hortons is all over Eastern Canada. Is it all over the whole country? Is there a rival to Tim Hortons? Well, no. There are other donut shops that show up, and then they go for a little while, but they don't usually last. There's something about Tim Hortons that's become a bit of our, I don't know, it feels Canadian. Now, in recent years, I think it's been bought out by a U.S. company. So that may change. I don't know. But in the past, it's always been kind of this, that's our Canadian place, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's interesting because the guy, Tim Horton was a hockey player, right? And it mixes donuts with hockey, two of our great loves. Yeah. Hockey is amazing. One of the things that I loved, I don't know if I mentioned to you this, and I'm determined, when I saw it, the first time I saw it in Quebec, there is a shopping mall with a skating rink right in the middle of the shopping mall. And at that time, I hadn't skated in about 40 years. But now, thanks to my niece, I've been out and I've been skating for the past 3 years. So I'm making it back up to Quebec, and I'm going to be bringing my skates up with me when I get up there.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds great.
Now, how many books are in the series right now?
Well, there's 6. And I decided to do something a little different than what I've done in the past. And I kind of completed all 6, and I decided to come out with the first 3 April 6th, and the second 3 will be coming out May 4th, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you, right? Oh. So I'm planning on coming out with them, all 6 of them, within about a month's time.
That's fantastic. Now, where can folks find Annalynn the Canadian Spy?
Anywhere. It's available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Everywhere from Amazon to what's big down in the States is Books A Million. Uh-huh. In Canada, Chapters is a big one up here. And anywhere you can buy books online, you can get a hold of Annalynn the Canadian Spy.
Hey, I want to put a challenge out there to you.
Yeah.
I think we should get Annalynn the Canadian Spy in every Tim Hortons in Canada.
Well, I would like that, and I thought with the Happy Meal at McDonald's too, I thought that would be a good thing, because get kids reading instead of playing with kind of these tiny toys or whatever. Get them reading. I'd love to be able to give away a book with each one of those Happy Meals.
Yeah. And I think too, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but one of the things I love about what you've been telling me about this series is it sounds like a really fun series for a family to read together. And, just because there's so much humor in it. And it's great, especially now, whether we're still in quarantine when folks are listening to this episode of the show, or if we're just out of quarantine. It would be great to have a laugh, especially together with family.
Yeah, and when I read all these books to my family, when I finished them and I got them cleaned up a little bit, and I read it to them before anyone else, and it was fun to be able to laugh together as a family reading through these. One of them, the fourth book, cracks me up so much I have trouble reading it without keeping a straight face. But there's something wrong when you laugh at your own jokes. But then I think you should laugh at your own jokes at the same time.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And want to challenge everybody else before I ask you where we can find you online. If you haven't tried poutine, you got to give it a shot. It might not be for you, but it's that would be a great thing to do if we're still under quarantine. That would be a great thing for a family to do together, because it is the basic recipe is French fries, gravy, and cheese. But I've seen a whole lot of other stuff.
Well, if you want to go all Canadian with it, you add bacon.
Canadian bacon. All right, enough of this frivolity. Where can we find you online, Shawn?
Well, you can find me at my website. It's ShawnPBRobinson.com. Right now I'm running a bit of a podcast with some of my other stories on there, and they can listen in. I've been putting them up as part of to reach families, give something to listen to in the midst of the quarantine and isolation. But ShawnPBRobinson.com, and if you want to find my books, it's ShawnPBRobinson.com/books.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of the brand new series, Annalynn the Canadian Spy. His name is Shawn P B Robinson. Shawn, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Thank you. This has been great.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Tasha Beatty. She is here speaking to us about Squealy the chicken. Squealy is dyslexic. This is a really fascinating conversation. Tasha is a teacher, a special needs teacher. She has a passion for teaching, a passion for helping kids make the most of the gifts that they have, to celebrate the gifts that they have. It's a beautiful conversation that you do not want to miss. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a great children's book, if you have written a book about something that you are passionate about, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book. All you need to do is go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button that you'll find at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. I want to thank the people who made today's show so very, very wonderful. I want to thank our guest, Shawn P B Robinson. Be sure to check out Annalynn the Canadian Spy. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my awesome author, Ambassador Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and of course, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.